Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time and welcome to my channel. In this video, I have some important news for you. The White House just made a prediction on when Congress could announce the next stimulus package. Now, I'm going to dig deeper into an interview with the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, and we'll hear exactly what he said. And towards the end of this video, I'll tell you exactly what House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said about White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows' comments. Now, as you can imagine, they aren't really the best of friends, but I do think it's important to look at the reaction from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi about the most recent comments from the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. Now, the White House Chief of Staff actually did predict that Congress would pass a pandemic stimulus package before the election. He said, and I quote, "I'm more optimistic about the possibility of a deal than I have been for a long time." He was actually interviewed on Fox Business today. Now, keep in mind, before I show you the interview, for me, it's important what these individuals, what these officials say. It doesn't matter which station they're on, whether they're on CNN or Fox News. It's important what they say because they're going to say the same things regardless of which station they're going to be on. It just happens that, one station focuses more on one side of the political spectrum, but it's important to hear what they have to say. And let's not be biased against any one particular news station, whether it's CNN or whether it's Fox Business. So let me jump right in. Here's what Meadows said. He predicted that Congress would pass a stimulus package before the election on November 3rd, despite the current state of the gridlock that exists between both parties. Now, keep in mind that the White House lead negotiators are White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, and they've been negotiating with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer on the Democratic side, and currently they are at a gridlock. So, when he was asked by Fox Business about where things stand right now and whether voters can actually see another stimulus package before the election, Meadows said, I'm not sure, obviously, but I do believe that we'll see that only because I've had a number of conversations, probably a dozen sometimes a day, with different rank and file members. When you listen to them, they are listening to their constituents. So it seems like the Republicans are trying to talk to as many Republicans as well as Democrats and try and muster up support and put pressure on the lead Democrat House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to try and pass a stimulus bill. We'll actually listen to what Mark Meadows had to say as well. And he did say, "I'm more optimistic today than I've been in a long time." So I thought that was a very telling comment because the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, has been very firm in his position when he's been representing the White House, when he's been representing the president while negotiating with Speaker Pelosi. So he also said that working families, and this, by the way, was a statement from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell said, "Working families must not suffer more than necessary because Democrat leaders think citizens' pain may help their political fortune." So as you can see, the Republicans at the administration are sort of starting to step up the intensity of their public facing opinion, if you will. And that's what's going on right now. And this is what Meadows said. He said, "There's more we agree upon than what we disagree upon. I think it's time to put politics aside, pass the stimulus, actually allow it to go to the president's desk." He also said, right now the stumbling block is aid to state and local governments. The numbers that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi put forth are just not supported by facts. So this is where things stand right now. And what I'll do is I'll actually analyze the interview with the White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, and I'll break his interview down into 4 segments, and we'll analyze all 4 segments together, and I'll show you the segments. But basically, in the first segment, Meadows highlighted the fact that it's important to put politics aside, and I quote, "pass the stimulus." He also said we have the foundation for an agreement. And he said that, he basically said, "I was on the phone with a couple of senators as well as Senate leadership to make sure that we put forth the bill coming out of the Senate that at least provides a foundation for getting an agreement." I thought this was very interesting. By the way, again, towards the end of this video, I'll show you the reaction from the Democrats, and I'll show you and I'll talk to you about what House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said, because I think it's important to hear both sides. But let's see this first segment from White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, and I want you to tell me in the comments section below what you think. But let's watch this segment, and I want to know what you folks think. Let's roll the tape.
Well, I think the Senate is not only going to hit the ground running, but actually they've been working over the break when they were back home in their districts working. I know as late as 9 o'clock last night, I was on the phone with a couple of senators as well as Senate leadership to make sure that we put forth a bill coming out of the Senate that at least provides a foundation for getting an agreement. I can tell you that there's more that we agree upon than what we disagree upon, and I think it's time that we put politics aside, pass this stimulus, actually allow it to come to the president's desk. He's not only encouraged us, but he's daily checking in to make sure that we're staying engaged to hopefully get relief to the American people.
So I was just talking with Cornerstone Macro's Nancy Lazar, and her team, her research team, is saying that they don't think we're going to get anything before the election.
Well, I think if they're talking to Nancy Pelosi and a couple of her people right around her, that may be accurate. But I can tell you there is a groundswell of support among rank and file Democrats and Republicans to suggest that there's some kind of compromise. Listen, when we look at enhanced unemployment, when we look at what we can do for schools, when we look at what we can do for those small businesses and direct stimulus checks, I think there's broad scale agreement on that. And right now, the thing that's the stumbling block is aid to state and local governments. The number that Speaker Pelosi puts forth is just not supported by the facts. So we're going to continue to negotiate on that. But I'm optimistic in the next 2 weeks that the pressure and the voice of the American people will start to have an impact on members of Congress.
Now, in the second segment of the interview, Mark Meadows was asked specifically about what's holding up the stimulus bill. Why is it that there hasn't been consensus so far? And as you can imagine, Mark Meadows reiterated the position of the administration, reiterated the position of the Republicans. He said Republicans support targeted relief for those people who need it the most. He did say that towards the end of this actual segment, but he did say some things that jumped out at me. He said that Republicans want to address what's needed in a meaningful way, but what we are not going to do is bail out cities that have been poorly run for a long time so that they can actually have their pet projects on the back of the American taxpayer. This is the heart of the disagreement between the Republicans and the Democrats and what's holding up the current stimulus package right now. And he said that, and so when it was legitimate needs, I think you'll find that Republicans both in the Senate and in the House are willing to address that. But the number that House Speaker Pelosi has put forth is $1 trillion, and almost half of that money she wants to put in, she actually wants to earmark it for state and local governments. Earmarking means that that money would be set aside and then used for something in the future. Now, we have to listen to House Speaker Pelosi's response to this, because I'm 100% certain she's going to be firing back with a response. In fact, she did respond, and I'll give you that response towards the end of this video, so make sure you stick around for that. But what Mark Meadows is saying is that half of the money, the $1 trillion that the Democrats want for state and local governments is essentially going to be put away and set aside and then used later as appropriate. And the Republicans are saying, hey, tell us what you want the money for. Is there a legitimate need right now? This is the position. Listen, there are always two sides to every story. So I want to make sure my viewers and subscribers understand the full picture. Let's roll the tape and see exactly what White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows had to say about this. Let's watch.
Well, I mean, that $9 billion that you just talked about from Mayor de Blasio is based on a forward looking on what he thinks that he might need for the next budget cycle. When you look at year-over-year revenues, they did take a hit, about $2 billion. When you start to really look at the revenue decrease, and what we're talking about is the actual loss of year-over-year revenue, it's about $275 billion. Republicans are willing to address that in a meaningful way to make sure that we provide that assistance. But what we're not going to do is bail out cities that have been poorly run for a long time, just so that they can actually have their pet projects on the back of the American taxpayer. And so when it's legitimate needs, I think you'll find that the Republicans, both in the Senate and the House, are willing to address that. But the number that Nancy Pelosi puts forth is almost $1 trillion. So almost half of the money that she wants to put in, she actually wants to earmark it for state and local governments. And that's just not what the American people would support. It's really not where the needs are. And so we're talking about making targeted relief to those people that need it most.
Now, in the third segment of this interview, I thought this was extremely important, because if you pay close attention to what Mark Meadows said, he said specifically, unemployment benefits are not the stumbling block. When he was asked to address unemployment benefits, because this is so important for 30 million Americans who are currently on unemployment, including the PUA program, he said, whether it's 300 or 400, I think we can get there on that particular issue. This is very, very important because it shows that the Republicans and the administration are willing to negotiate, are willing to budge on the unemployment benefit extensions. And so it seems like they're willing to come closer to what the Democrats want. This was my interpretation based on what he said. Let's listen closely to the White House Chief of Staff. Remember, he's a White House Chief of Staff. So he sits right next to the president and he represents the president in these negotiations. So he said $600, as you know, actually end up paying the average unemployed worker more than what they would have made for showing up to work. So it seems very clear that the Republicans and the administration do not want to go to $600 a week, but they have talked about $300 a week, $400 a week booster on top of the state unemployment benefits, and they've talked about that consistently now. So he said, we're trying to make sure that we can measure that. And he said, and I quote, "I'm not so pessimistic that is a stumbling block." That means the unemployment benefit extensions are not the stumbling block, according to the White House Chief of Staff. Let's watch and listen to what the White House Chief of Staff had to say about unemployment benefits.
So whether it's 300 or 400 as he proposed, I think we can get there on that particular issue. $600, as you know, actually ended up paying the average unemployed worker more than what they would have made for showing up to work. So we're trying to make sure that we measure that. But I'm not so pessimistic that is a stumbling block. Again, if we can push back and say, let's come together on what we agree upon, it'll provide a foundation for getting there.
And in the final segment of the interview, the Chief of Staff was specifically asked, when do you think we can see a stimulus package? Can we see it soon? Can we see it in the next few weeks, potentially before the election? And he said, I'm not sure, obviously, so, he can't predict what the future holds, but he did say, I do believe that we'll see that, because I've had a number of conversations, probably a dozen, sometimes a day, with different rank and file members. And when you listen to them, they're listening to their constituents. If we just listen to the American people and meet those needs like the president is doing, I think we can get there. And I'm more optimistic perhaps today than I've been in a long time. So it seems like he is optimistic because he is representing the president, and they are speaking with several Republican lawmakers, and they are hoping that the Democrats see eye to eye with them. Let's roll the tape and see exactly what White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows had to say about this. Let's watch.
Do you believe that we will see another stimulus package before the election then, Mark? Or you're not sure?
And, I do. I'm not sure, obviously, but I do believe that we'll see that, only because I've had a number of conversations, probably a dozen, sometimes a day, with different rank and file members. And when you listen to them, they're listening to their constituents. If we will just listen to the American people and meet those needs like the President of the United States is doing, I think we get there. And I'm more optimistic perhaps today than I've been in a long time.
Speaking of the Democrats seeing eye to eye with them, on your screen you'll see a tweet from Jake Fitzpatrick, who's a Bloomberg reporter, and he quoted David Weston, who's another Bloomberg reporter and anchor. And David Weston asked Speaker Pelosi who she's negotiating on with the stimulus, and she said, I quote, "Certainly not Mark Meadows." And she was referring to Mark Meadows, the White House Chief of Staff, who you saw on this video. And she said Republicans still have to negotiate among themselves. And here's another tweet from Jack Fitzpatrick, and he wrote, House Speaker Pelosi expects a deal on stopgap funding to avoid October shutdown. We'll come to an agreement on that, I feel quite certain. Said she's never confident about the president when it comes to veracity or truth, but that no one benefits from a shutdown. So it's quite clear that she feels that the deal to avoid the government shutdown will indeed happen, and I already reported that on my channel. But she doesn't take Mark Meadows seriously, and that's where the House Speaker stands. This is where things stand right now, everybody. I hope you learned something new from this video. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. My name is Dr. Nitin Choda. I have the fortune, the honor, the privilege of living the American dream. Check out my introductory video. I am a beneficiary of American generosity. I believe I'm a symbol of American exceptionalism, and I can help you live your American dream. Make sure you click like, you subscribe, you enable notifications so you get instant updates from our channel going forward. Sometimes YouTube does not send out instant notifications, so make sure you bookmark our channel, youtube.com/ignition time. That's again youtube.com/ignition time, so that you can come to our homepage and you can check out our videos at your own convenience. Now, you can also follow us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is ignition_time. That's ignition_time. Make sure to follow us on Instagram. We do a lot of fun and interesting things on Instagram, specifically for our Instagram followers. Now, you can also get your cell phone out, send a text message with the word ignition or with the word time to 70,000. That's 70000, and you can get added to our SMS list. You can also get added to our email list. Go to ignitiontime.com/alerts. That's ignitiontime.com/alerts. You can opt out of our SMS list or our email list at any time. Remember, we release videos at 2 p.m. East Coast time most days of the week. So make sure you click like, you subscribe, you enable notifications. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Thanks.